Maybe you're someone who has enough income that you need to sit down a little bit and delegate where you're saving to. Let's say maybe you need to figure out what your order of operations is in terms of saving. That's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to walk you through each of the options in order of priority, and we can discuss which one makes sense for each person. So first off, I want to note that I'm speaking to people with a high income and a high capacity to save. Not everyone can make it through all of these levels, and that's okay. That's normal, but this video should let you figure out how far down the scale you can get. So let's jump in. The first thing everyone should be doing is getting your 401k match. So that normally means you're getting something along the lines of a dollar for dollar match up to maybe 3%, and then maybe an additional 50% up to 5%. This is free money, and it hurts my financial advisor heart a little bit to see how many people will bypass this. This should be very near the top of the priority for anyone who is saving. Once you're getting the match in your 401k, a lot of people assume that things are good and they just want to keep increasing what they're putting into their 401k. But I think there's a better alternative. I think the challenge is to actually stop saving more to the 401k at this point and instead turn to a health savings account. A lot of people forget this one, and it's one of the best savings vehicles available. So why? Well, because an HSA has a triple tax advantage. You get a tax deduction when you put your money in, the money grows tax-free, and then you can take it out tax-free and use it for other medical expenses. That's better than a 401k because you get the same deduction as usual, but you get the freedom to take the money out for medical expenses. It's also better than a Roth IRA for the same reasons. It's tax deductible going in and tax-free coming out, because we all seem to have medical issues at some point. So in 2026, you can contribute $4,400 per year if you're an individual and $8,750 if you have family coverage. If you're 55 or older, you can put in an extra $1,000 on top of that. Now, I know not everyone qualifies. You'd have to have a high deductible health plan, but unfortunately, most of us have one of those these days. So if you are, you should be first getting your 401k match, and second, maximize your HSA. Now, once your HSA is maximized, for me, the next step is to be flexible, actually. So the next step is to get a really good amount in a brokerage or savings account. For me, for most people, I think that means at least around $100,000. I'm a big believer in the non-qualified brokerage account because most of the money in our 401k or Roth IRA, with some exceptions, is more or less locked up until age 59 and a half. And I don't know about you, but I plan to spend a lot of money before I turn 59 and a half. And I expect there's going to be quite a few opportunities and quite a few needs I'll have. So having $100,000 that you can access at any time is a really nice comfort blanket, and it leaves you feeling a lot more secure if you have some volatility in your job scenario, or maybe you need to buy a car or a house down payment. So sure, you're going to have to pay a little bit in taxes as this grows, but I think the flexibility is worth it for most people. So let's say you've maximized your HSA, you've gotten your match from the 401k, and you even have $100,000 in your brokerage account. Now I would say a person should go back to their 401k and maximize it. Get that tax deduction. As a reminder, I'm speaking to people who are high income here and who need that tax deduction because they expect to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. Once you're fully maximizing your 401k, I think the next step for most people is to do a backdoor Roth IRA. So if you're a high income earner, you probably already have found that you can't contribute directly to a Roth IRA. There's income limits and they phase out. So in 2026, if you're making over 168,000 as a single filer or 252,000 for someone married filing jointly, you're out. But there's no income limit on Roth conversions. So what you can do is make a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA and then immediately or a few days later convert it back to a Roth IRA. That's what's called the backdoor Roth IRA. Now, it might sound like a loophole, and that's exactly what it is. It's something that the IRS knows about and Congress knows about it, And they keep threatening to close this loophole, but they keep not doing it. So I think a person should do this as long as they have the capacity and the knowledge to do it safely. Now, honestly, I'd rather have most people saving even more on a pre-tax basis at this point. But if you're already maxing out your 401k and HSA, you're probably out of pre-tax options. So the backdoor Roth might be your best option. You can put 7,500 in for 2026, or if you're 50 or older, you can contribute 8,600. So it's a little bit of extra paperwork and brain damage to get this done, but once it's in the Roth IRA, it can grow tax-free forever. Now, the other caveat is you can't do this if you already have a traditional IRA with some money in it. You might be costing yourself some taxes. So if you're one of these people trying to execute a backdoor Roth IRA, I really think it's something that is best done with a financial advisor guiding you. Next step for many people, if you have children, would be to start contributing to 529 plans. 529 plans are education savings account. The money grows in here tax-free, but you can always take it out tax-free as long as you use it for qualified education expenses. There's no specific annual limit of what you can put into a 529, but you do need to stay under the gift tax threshold, which is $19,000 per person in 2026. If you're contributing with a spouse, that means you could contribute $38,000 per year per child, which leaves plenty of savings room for most people. You can even do a special thing where you fast forward and do 5 years of contribution in 1 year if you want to. Again, that's something best done only with a professional to make sure it's properly tracked. Now, there is something new for 2026. They just doubled the amount that you can use for K through 12 expenses from 10,000 up to 20,000 per year. So if you've got kids in a private school, a 529 just became a lot more attractive. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. Everything I've just talked about are strategies that just about anyone can do. The next few strategies only work for some people. So let's start with people who are self-employed. This is where things get really interesting. If you have self-employment income whatsoever, you have access to a few extra savings vehicles. Let's start with a SEP IRA. This is the simplest one. With a SEP IRA, you can contribute up to 25% of your self-employment income, up to a maximum of $72,000 for 2026. Now you're probably thinking, Bjorn, I have a job. I really am already maximizing your 401k there. A lot of people, though, I find have some sort of side income. Maybe it's for your spouse, maybe it's a little bit of consulting. But if you do have some side income, this might be a good option for you. So even if you're only making $25,000 or so from a side hustle, this could turn into a meaningful contribution. 25% of $25,000 is a $6,000 tax deduction. That's real savings. The nice thing about a SEP IRA is it's really simple. You can set it up and make contributions right up until your tax filing deadline, including extensions. Now, there's another even often better option, and this would be for people who really have some significant self-employment, and that would be a solo 401k. A solo 401k is going to let you contribute in two ways. First, you can make employee deferrals, just like a regular 401k. For 2026, again, that number is up to $24,500. And if you're 50 or older, you get to add another $8,000. Now, since you, in this case, are both the employer and the employee, well, you as the employer can make a profit contribution to the employee, who is also yourself, because you really like them. And that contribution can be 25% of your compensation. So let's say you're 45 years old and you make $150,000 from your self-employment. With the SEP IRA, you could contribute around $37,500. That's about 25% of your income. But with a solo 401k, you could contribute the $24,500 as an employee. And because you, the employee, are doing such a good job, you, the employer, could give them a very generous $37,500 profit sharing on top of that. So that's $62,000 total. That's way more than the $24,500 that you can get in a single year from a normal 401k. Now, solo 401ks are kind of complicated to administer, and there's often a cost with that. So make sure you're doing that right. Make sure you have a CPA who knows what forms they have to file, especially if you have more than $250,000 in your solo 401k. So again, this is a strategy that I would only do if you have an advisor or a great tax preparer by your side. Now, the next level, if you're self-employed and you've done all of that and you still have money left over you want to save for retirement savings, is to think about doing a cash balance plan. A cash balance plan is actually a type of defined benefit plan. A 401k is defined contribution. You can only put a certain amount in there. A defined benefit plan is one where it's sort of like a pension. So it's way more complex than a 401k or a SEP, and it actually requires working with an actuary, which of course is going to mean there's going to be some administrative headache and cost, but the contributions are much, much higher. So we're talking about being able to make contributions of $100,000 or even $350,000 in a year, depending on your age and income. So this is typically for people who are 50 or older and have a high and stable self-employment income. So if you're a lawyer, a doctor, or a consultant, or some sort of business owner with a predictable revenue, this can be a really useful tool. The contributions are age dependent, so the older you are, the more you can put away. And that's because the plan is designed to get you to a certain benefit level at retirement. And if you're older, you have less time to get there. Now, there are some big downsides to these. First off, we already talked about the administrative costs. You're going to have to hire that actuary to calculate your contribution each year, and you're required to fund it every year, regardless of how your business is doing. The next issue is that the plan is going to have to be made for all of your employees. So if you have a lot of employees and if they're high earners, this could mean you're doing really large contributions for your employees as well, which may negate the tax benefit of doing it for yourself. So if you're in the right situation, this can be one of the most effective ways to reduce your taxes and build wealth for retirement. Now, what if you are saying, I don't have any self-employment income? Are there any other options? Well, some people, if they work for a larger company, will have an option to do deferred compensation, or sometimes it's called a non-qualified deferred compensation plan. Again, not all employers offer this, but a lot of larger companies do, especially if you're in an executive role. With deferred compensation, you can defer part of your salary or bonus to a future date, which is usually retirement. There's no specific IRS limit for how much you can defer, and you don't pay taxes on the money until you actually receive it. The downside is it's not actually protected like a 401k. This money stays on your employer's books. Essentially, it's a promise from the company to pay you later. So if your company goes bankrupt, you could find yourself in line with everybody else trying to get some money out of them. So you have to feel confident in your employer's financial stability before you defer too much of your money into deferred compensation. But if you work for a solid company, you've maxed out your 401k and all the other options, deferred compensation can be a good way to go for part of your retirement savings. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about one more thing, and that's life insurance. A lot of people are going to convince you that the whole life insurance or variable life insurance or maybe even annuities are a great savings vehicle once you've run out of space in your 401k. And I'm here to tell you that we normally don't agree with that. Here's why. A lot of these products charge very high fees. We're talking about mortality charges, administrative expenses, and surrender expenses. And these fees can often eat up any tax benefits you might get. Now, life insurance does have its place. And if you need life insurance, often it's best to buy simple, cheap term insurance. But as a savings vehicle, I think often you're better off looking at all the options we've talked about today and then closely investigating whether a regular brokerage account can do better than the life insurance, especially when you think about the tax deferral of exchange traded funds, tax loss harvesting, and start taking advantage of asset location. Again, talk with a fee-only financial advisor like us at Quarry Hill before making a decision to jump into life insurance. So let's recap. First, go and get your employer match from your 401k. Once you've got your match, max out your HSA if you qualify. Once you've got that, make sure you're well set up in a brokerage account with a good backstop for any emergencies. Then you go back to your 401k and fully maximize it. Once you've done all of that, now is a good time to start working on your Roth IRAs. And if you have kids, start adding on 529 plans. Now, if you've got some self-employment income, consider the SEP IRA or a solo 401k or even a cash balance plan. And if you don't have self-employment and you're making high income, look at whether your employer offers some deferred compensation. Be skeptical of anyone who is pushing too hard to sell some sort of an insurance product. The key is to use the right tools for your situation. Everyone's circumstances are different, but hopefully this can give you a roadmap for what to consider once you've maxed out your 401k. And if you have questions about any of this, or you want to talk through what makes sense for your specific situation, please reach out to me or one of our financial advisors here at Quarry Hill. We're here to help, and thanks for watching.